This is Michael Popok, and it's time for Legal AF After Dark. United States Supreme Court held oral argument again on women's reproductive rights. What else is new? Let's go back and keep trying to restrict women's rights to choose over and over again, or will they? There's a new case in front of them as to whether medicated or medication abortions is going to be allowed in the United States. A safe procedure, as safe as aspirin, in terms of some of the drugs that are being used, approved by the FDA for 24 years, is under attack by anti-abortion advocates and made-up fake organizations that are trying to bring their case for a nationwide ban of mifepristone up to the United States Supreme Court. Will it work? What was our view of what happened during the United States Supreme Court oral argument that was also here on the MeidasTouch Network? Take a listen to Legal AF. Supreme Court and mifepristone. Let me set the stage and I'll turn it over to Karen. So we've got a ruling over a year ago in Abilene, Texas. Some people didn't even know there was a division of the federal court in Abilene, Texas. Oh, there is. It has one judge. His name is Judge Kaczmarek. And before he became a judge who was appointed by Donald Trump, he was the general counsel for a right-wing MAGA organization that was against abortion rights. Oh my God, this is the judge they found? What a coincidence. Not a coincidence. In fact, they created an organization nobody ever heard of, comprised of some doctors nobody ever heard of, in Abilene, Texas, of all things, to file the suit in Abilene, Texas. The problem with all that and the argument that the FDA had violated some sort of rulemaking because they were allowing a drug that's been on the books and approved for the last 24 years as a safe way to have a medicated abortion, which is the number one way women have these things. All of a sudden, because, well, they won the Dobbs decision, let's go after every way that a woman can take care of her reproductive health. Let's go after that. And so they went and they filed the suit and they got Judge Kaczmarek to enter from Abilene, Texas, a nationwide ban on 350 million people, including, about 51% of it being women, preventing them from using the mifepristone, which is the second drug in a two-drug regime for medicated abortion. Some people might be thinking, nationwide ban on women's rights from Abilene, Texas? Is that allowed? Well, that was the same question the United States Supreme Court asked, because the United States Supreme Court doesn't issue nationwide bans. We've got a battle going on right now. We got many civil wars going on, unfortunately, in this country, red versus blue. And on the battlefield of reproductive health and reproductive rights, the civil war that's going on is also being led by a renegade rogue group of trial judges in the federal courts, primarily in Texas and in the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, which includes Louisiana, against the United States Supreme Court that's trying to rein these cowboys in and stop them from doing it. So I think they, now having heard the oral argument and how poorly it went for the Alliance for Hippocratic Medicine, especially by the right-wing conservative, usually reliable justices like Kavanaugh and Gorsuch and Amy Coney Barrett, I think they might have taken the case in order to finally slap back Judge Kaczmarek, who I think they really had enough with him and his nationwide bans. I mean, one of the things that happened during the hearing, the argument was the FDA did improper rulemaking because in 2016 and then in 2020, because of COVID, they allowed women to get this drug not through a doctor in a direct appointment, in a live appointment, but through telehealth and through mail order. No, that's terrible. Can't allow that. There's doctors being forced to dispense medicine that they shouldn't be allowed to dispense, and they're being injured. Okay. Fundamentally, there has to be standing. In order to get a ticket into the federal courthouse, you have to show that you've been injured. Okay. There's a law in the books already that says if you're a doctor, I mean, I think this is disgusting, immoral, and against the Hippocratic Oath, but there is a law in the books already that says if you're a doctor who does not want to, because of your conscience, you and your religious beliefs, you don't want to dispense abortion pills, you don't want to do abortions, you don't want to do things that go to that area of reproductive health, you don't have to. And your liability is prevented by a series of laws. So you already have the ability to opt out. Why a group of doctors can run into court in Abilene, Texas, and ban women all over the country from getting mifepristone is beyond me. Even the Fifth Circuit thought that Judge Kaczmarek had gone just slightly too far. Slightly. He was going to ban it all the way. He was going to ban the drug completely. Instead, they banned the rulemaking from 2016 and 2020 saying that that was done improperly, despite the fact that every study has shown the mifepristone is as safe, if not safer, than aspirin. I'm not using that as in hyperbole. That is the study's findings after 24 years of study. Okay. And so the issue here was not the constitutional right to an abortion, because that has already been decided that there isn't one by the Dobbs decision overturning Roe versus Wade. The question was the FDA and its ability as an agency to regulate and through administrative orders, regulate drugs, any kind of drugs, including mifepristone. And Gorsuch, when he took on Josh Hawley's wife, Erica, who was the lawyer representing this phony organization, he said, let me ask you a question. In the 12 years of the FDR administration, which arguably was the most activist administration ever, trying to pull the country out of the Great Depression, passing the New Deal, establishing all of these agencies, all of these new rules, changing the relationship between the government, the federal government, and the people, and all of that, all of these things that the New Deal did. How many nationwide injunctions from courts resulted? And he said, I'll answer it for you. 0. How many have resulted in the last 4 years, which is the Trump era, mainly from activist judges? He said 60. He said 60 in the last 4 years, none during the entire, before that. That's a problem. That is a problem for you. So that was Gorsuch. Then you have Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett jumping in with, let me ask you a question. This all went to Hawley. There already is a law on the books, isn't there, that allows a person who's a doctor to refrain from doing something they find morally unsavory, right? You already have that. And Gorsuch chimed in with, how do you get to take what is basically a small lawsuit and issue a nationwide ban on it and a referendum on FDA rulemaking? And then Kagan jumped in with, where is your injury? Where right now, you need to have it now. Where is the doctor that's being injured and where is the injury? Because without it, how are you here? Which I thought was not ironic for Kagan, but ironic for the court, because when the right wing wants to pass a new law, a new judicial pronouncement, usually about church and state, they don't care what we don't care what the facts are of the case. They don't even need a case. The case is irrelevant. Forget the facts of this case, I once heard Alito say. That's not relevant. Really? You're supposed to be a court dealing with live controversies where you have to have a case. Here, they're back to, where is the case? Where's the injury? Where's the damage? This went all against the lawyers for the Alliance for Hippocratic Medicine. And the Solicitor General, along with the drug manufacturing lawyer who did a very, very good job during oral argument, she only took fire from Alito and Justice Thomas. So I'll leave it to you now, what you observed and what your review is of what happened there. What do you think happens next? And then as a teaser, we're not done with abortion rights this term by this Supreme Court, because in 2 weeks or so, they're going to be handling another case on abortion. Not done yet. But what do you think happens with mifepristone and a woman's ability to use it for a medicated abortion?
Look, I think the court is going to take what I would call the cowardly way out. But I guess, as long as you get to the right result, you get to the right result. And I think they're going to say there's no standing, that the plaintiffs did not have standing to basically bring this case in the first place. And the reason I say that's the cowardly way out is, look, that's like a technicality. This is the kind of thing that people get frustrated with the court system, saying, oh, this case got thrown out on a technicality. And it's just frustrating because it's just mostly, it doesn't answer the question anymore. It really still leaves this open question out there in the world about whether a person who's pregnant and doesn't want to be pregnant can have an abortion. And when they reversed Dobbs, and I can't believe it's been 2 years now, when they reversed Dobbs, they specifically said, we're going to leave it up to the states. And then you have judges like Kaczmarek, who, if you were going to name a villain in a Marvel comic, I think it should be Kaczmarek. It sounds so menacing, his name. He lied during his confirmation hearings. He hid his name. He took his name off of articles, anti-abortion articles, and other articles and other publications that he was a part of, and then didn't disclose them on his application, so he couldn't be questioned about it during his confirmation hearings, just so that he could get in there, frankly, and they could go and make up a new company or a new group of doctors, and that these doctors who have never had to administer mifepristone to anybody, that they could say there's the potential for future harm, because theoretically some woman or person who's experiencing medical complications as a result of mifepristone could appear in the emergency room, and they might have to issue render aid to that person, and that's their harm, that they could potentially have to do that. And what I didn't understand about the doctors, these doctors, what their position was okay, doctors with a conscience, you don't have to perform abortion, or you don't have to administer or prescribe mifepristone. But why, if somebody's having a complication from something, would you not treat them in an emergency room? That's what I didn't understand from their position, because lots of people appear in an emergency room that you may or may not agree with their lifestyle. You could have someone who, a lot of people who are engaged in a shooting, for example, could get shot themselves. People who commit crimes often have to go to the hospital. You could have somebody who's overdosing on drugs. You might not agree with drug use. You might not agree with all sorts of things, but nobody passes judgment in a hospital. That's what the Hippocratic Oath is. So I didn't understand their whole position about we might have to administer medical aid to somebody who on their own made a decision with a different doctor who doesn't have the same issue to prescribe mifepristone, and then they're experiencing a medical complication. That, to me, that is not something that they're permitted on their oath to kind of take the road out. But it also made me not understand their whole position to begin with. But, I think that's how the court's going to get out of it. I think they're going to basically say that that Judge Kaczmarek in this one judge town, I don't think they like the precedent that it sets, in addition to the abortion issue and the mifepristone issue. I don't think they like that you can basically manufacture faux standing and go to one of these one judge towns and get the ruling. I mean, it's forum shopping, it's judge shopping. You're not allowed to do that. And, and I think they're going to take the off ramp of standing and basically say, that's how we're going to do it. And this particular litigation isn't really about the merits, right? This isn't the full briefing on whether this is a meritorious, on whether mifepristone and abortion and all that. This particular issue in front of this court, and this argument was whether Judge Kaczmarek's decision would become law, right? Whether there would be this nationwide ban while the case is being litigated, and whether it gets stayed or paused during that time. And that's what's happening here, right? While they litigate and appeal his decision, does it go into effect while they appeal it, or does it get paused? And that's what they're arguing here. And I think they're going to just throw the whole thing and dismiss it on standing grounds, saying that these doctors lacked standing, and dismiss the case to begin with. And so but unfortunately, this organization of these doctors saying that they might be called on to treat these women who have complications, if they do it this way, unfortunately, they're just kicking the can down the road, in my opinion. And that's what I don't love about this, even though I think that's what they're going to do. I mean, look, you even got Amy Coney Barrett, okay, to basically say that, standing requires that plaintiffs have experienced an actual harm, not a speculative one. And I think when you've got Amy Coney Barrett on your side, I think it's pretty clear what's going to happen.
Yeah, just to be clear, this is the substantive appeal. So they're no longer deciding whether the thing should stay in place while other issues happen. This group already 7-2 blocked Kaczmarek's nationwide ban, or the Fifth
Oh,
Circuit.
did I get that wrong?
Well, I mean, I wasn't sure where you were going with it, but if you're arguing that they were still waiting for another substantive appeal, we're not. This group 7-2, except with Alito and Thomas in the dissent, are already blocked Kaczmarek / Fifth Circuit, and this is the substantive appeal.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, I apologize that I got that wrong.
That's okay. That's why we do it together.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad. I'm glad. I was so focused on the standing thing. I guess I just didn't realize. Anyway, but it's just interesting that Alito, to me, seems like he is still going to that they're not going to get Alito. That's what I
Thomas.
thought.
Wait, Thomas.
Yeah, or Thomas. Yeah.
Questioned the lawyer for Danco, which is the the drug company, and said, why doesn't your company's continued sale of mifepristone violate the Comstock Act? And she was like, sorry? And he said, the Comstock Act, right. The Comstock Act is against obscenity. It is a criminal statute that has not been enforced by any federal government or agency or prosecutor in over 80 years.
Wow.
But it is the dog whistle for the anti-abortion group. They love the Comstock Act. They like to talk about it. They think it's the way to tear down all of these rules and regulations. And she had a great response. She looked Thomas in the eye, and she said, with all due respect, Justice Thomas, that's not an issue on appeal. That hasn't been briefed, and it's not before the court. It takes a lot of confidence to be able to shove back at an out of whack Justice Thomas trying to use the Comstock Act to claim that drug companies at this moment are all criminally violating a statute when, of course, they are not. And Alito sort of likes that too, because he whatever Thomas likes. They're like the Siamese Twins. I'm sorry, conjoined twins. Whatever they do together, they do it together. So they're going to be on the losing end of this decision also. I mean, 7 people on that court thought that Kaczmarek in the Fifth Circuit was wrong and blocked the ban blocked his nationwide ban, until they got to this oral argument. And now it's going to be the same lineup. It's going to be, that's what I said at the start. It used to be you couldn't tell exactly at a lot of oral arguments how the ultimate ruling is going to be. Oh no, you can tell here. This is going to be 7-2 on either standing, which is what you talked about as being the coward's way out, which I'm okay with ultimately, or it's going to be the substance, which is not only is there no injury here, but as long as we're at it, let me also tell you that you can't use this. It makes no sense. There's no injury here, and the rulemaking was appropriate by the FDA. What they're worried about, this is the policy problem that the Supreme Court is really worried about, is they have out of control. They have a set of out of control rogue trial judges and circuit courts that they need to rein in. And it starts and ends in the Fifth Circuit, a little bit of the 11th, but really the Fifth Circuit, who comes up with crazy decisions. Joe Biden is not the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. A judge sitting in Texas or Louisiana is, or a guy in Abilene, Texas, population, who knows what, can ban a woman's right to have access to medicated or medication abortion in her home state because he got taken. In order to get taken, you have to not do it willingly. He was duped willingly by a fake group that formed in Abilene, Texas, who have no injury, in order to roll out this policy decision by the Alliance of Defending Freedom, or whatever this crazy law firm is that Josh Hawley's wife is a part of. I mean, you literally can't make it up. And I was sort of encouraged, I guess that's the right way to say it, by a Supreme Court that was willing to rip the mask, both conservative and liberal, right-wing MAGA and the other side, rip the mask off of this and say, what are we doing? Nationwide bans from Abilene, Texas about abortion rights and the FDA's rulemaking? No. And now we're going to see who's going to be in the majority on that decision. We'll get the decision before June. Is it going to be Gorsuch? Is it going to be Amy Coney Barrett or Kagan or someone? It's got to be somebody in the majority, the 7 in the majority, and then how that rule and how it looks. And it's important. And the other issue you raise is going to be touched on again in another oral argument and another decision this term alone, 2 years after Dobbs, about what happens during emergency situations with women and their reproductive health. I mean, it does concern me. I'd be remiss if I didn't say this, that the Supreme Court just consistently and relentlessly returns to the area of a woman's womb over and over again in the Supreme Court term. I don't trust this group. I don't trust this lineup. As I'm praising them slightly today, I'm sure I'll be maddened by them and disgusted by them another day. This is not the group that I want throwing up the hood and monkeying around under the hood of civil rights, women's rights, and reproductive rights. I mean, can we get past this term? Can we fast forward? When sometimes in movies, Karen, or in long episodes, or what do you call it, episodic TV, when they run out of gas of ideas, they just fast forward 10 years and pick up the characters 10 years later. Can we just fast forward 10 years and get past this current group and hope that a few people drop off for various reasons and get replaced by the right kind of people? Let's just do that. I don't want them monkeying around with civil rights, women's rights, constitutional rights really much longer. But, that's not, I don't have that ability to hit that fast forward button, and we are what we are, right?
I'm gonna be accused of being a conspiracy theorist right now, and I apologize. But the reason I don't like the cowardly off-ramp of just saying lack of standing is it just kicks the can down the road. And I think what they're trying to do, I really do, is they don't want to go too far yet, because that could have a backlash against Trump in November and other Republicans. And I think they're going to just, let's put the brakes on this for now. Let's not rule on this now, and let people forget about Dobbs 2 years ago.
I like that.
And show them.
I like that analysis.
Yeah, and show them that, look, they're not so bad. Amy Coney Barrett's, she's not so bad. And people have amnesia, and get them, because they took a lot of flack in Alabama with the IVF, the whole, you could prosecute for manslaughter for dropping eggs, and whatever in Alabama, that had a huge backlash. You saw that seat get flipped, this week in Alabama, right? From Republican to Democrat. It has a real impact. And I think they're absolutely worried about that. And so here, if they can take an off-ramp and kick the can down the road to the future, let Donald Trump get elected, rule on standing, get him elected, let him appoint more judges, and here we go, and they're going to take away these rights. They said in Dobbs, leave it up to the states. But this is absolutely a situation, I think, where you put your nose in the tent, kind of thing, and they're going to come crashing in, and they're going to try to take away these rights. Ultimately, that's what I think. Again, I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but that's what I think is happening here.
I like the conspiracy theory. I like that they're not trying to rock the boat one more time to help the Republican Party in their electoral success. Well, if you like a legal podcast at the intersection of law and politics, run by lawyers who know what they're talking about at that same intersection, you come to the right place, and the only place, MeidasTouch Network and Legal AF, where we do our work exclusively. We do it on Wednesdays and Saturdays in a curated special podcast where we pull together the 5 developments at the intersection of law and politics, and we bring it to you. Wednesdays, I do it with Karen Friedman Agnifilo, former prosecutor. Saturday, I do it with Ben Meiselas, civil rights lawyer, co-founder of the MeidasTouch Network. And then we do hot takes like this one. The reason for this one is if you've already seen all 1 hour and 30 minutes of our episode, we appreciate you. Thank you for being part of our audience. But take this clip, help us market, send it off to friends and family and people in your life and say, hey, Legal AF, I love the show. Here's a clip. And maybe they'll join and become part of our audience. If by chance you have no idea who I am or what I'm talking about, then that's possible. I'm Michael Popok. That was Legal AF. And we invite you to join us Wednesdays and Saturdays on YouTube, on the MeidasTouch Network, and then on audio podcast platforms of your choice. So until my next hot take, until my next Legal AF, this is Michael Popok reporting. Heary, heary, Legal AF Law Breakdown is now in session. Go beyond the headlines and get a deep dive into the important legal concepts you need to know, and we discuss every day on Legal AF. exclusive content you won't find anywhere else, all for the price of a couple of cups of coffee. Join us at patreon.com/legalaf. That's patreon.com/legalaf.